Hey guys, Mike Pytel here. We are inside my warehouse. Today I'm going to be making a video to show you guys how I make my pegs. So if you're not aware by now, I am the owner of AVID Scooters among some other stuff. But AVID Scooters is a wholesale manufacturing brand where I sell pegs and other accessory pieces like different hardware, deck pins, wax, things of that nature. One of my favorite products after the hourglass pegs is what I call the Deviation Pegs. They are a special type of nylon plastic. If you have never ridden a plastic peg, I would definitely suggest it. They grind crazy fast, but my pegs have a good amount of control still, and I make them all right here in the USA by hand. I use what's called a lathe, which is the piece of machinery behind me right here. So a few years back, I purchased one of them and kind of got things going. The main reason I bought it was to make the prototypes of the hourglass peg, which is, you know, my favorite product, something that has the most heart in it. It was, you know, years and years ago. They were the first pegs to be released with curvature to it rather than just a regular cylindrical peg. I spent a lot of years prototyping and designing to make the perfect peg in my eyes. If you haven't tried those out yet, I would definitely suggest that as well. But yeah, so the Deviation pegs, the plastic pegs that I have, they've been out for a few years now as well. But recently I released the XL version. So this is like the rough shape of the regular size, and then that is the shape of the new XLs. So you can see there's a pretty significant difference as far as the size goes. Alright, so the first thing I do to make my pegs is I have to take what's called rod stock, which is basically it's more or less just the stock material that I use. Like I said, this is a special type of nylon that I use for the pegs. And then I use a miter saw to just chop it up into little pieces. So let's show you guys how I do that. Alright, so I'll go through and I'll cut them all up. When I'm doing big runs, I'll collect them in a bin, and then I take that bin and I bring it over here to the lathe. So when I'm doing a bunch of pegs, I'll have this this crate down below. It just collects all different pieces. Just for this video, we're only going to be making like one peg, but I cut just a couple pieces just to give a rough idea of what I do. So what I'll end up doing is I'll take all that stock material, I'll cut it down into 2-inch pieces, and then I go through and I take it through the steps. So I'll do one step here, and then I do the next step, and then I take all of those and I put them into there, and then I take all of those and I put them into there, and so forth and so on. Alright, so then I take this 2-inch piece and I do what's called I face the material. So what I'll do is I'll put a perfect edge onto this flat side right there, and then I'll flip it and I'll make it exactly 2 inches and do it to the other side. Alright, so now you can kind of see like a before and after with that. That one's all nice and clean, whereas that one's rough. So this one is the new one, and that's the old one. Alright, so then I make sure that it is exactly 2 inches long, and then it's good to go. Alright, and so right now I'm setting up the drill chuck, which is going to drill the concentric holes inside of the peg. So I'm going to line this up, tighten it all down, and get this to the right RPM. Now I'm going to flip it over, and I'm going to change out the drill bit. Now this first one is going to be 17/32 of an inch, so this is just over a ½ inch as far as the size goes. I could also use a ½ inch. This one is just a little bit newer and sharper, so I like to use this one. I'm going to make this a lot slower. With this one, the depth really matters, so after I go in a little bit, I'm going to kind of reset this. I don't know if you can see it on there, but there is measurements right here that show every 1/16 of an inch in. So I'm going to set this back to 0 right there, and then I'm going to loosen this, and I'm going to align the biggest part of the bit and then tighten that back down. And then I'm going to go in the rest of the way to a 1 inch depth. Now for the next one, I'm going to do the final size, which is 3/4 of an inch drill bit. This is going to make the inner diameter of the big hole 3/4 of an inch. What this allows for is this allows for a socket to be implanted into the peg so that there's it's very easy to run doubles. And I'm going to go in 1 inch. So I'll clean this up later on the lathe, but now I have 5/16 hole there for an axle, and then the 3/4 of an inch hole right here for a socket and nut to be put in. Now I'm going to flip the peg around to work on the side that's going to make contact with the fork or the deck. Alright, and for this next step, this is when I'm going to put the angle into the peg. I just got to reset some of my tooling and everything. So Alright, so after I have it all shaped up, then I'm just going to clean up this edge. Alright, and there you have it. From start to finish, that is a peg.